Okay, the last kind of activity is one that I think is as important as the assignment activity, and that's the quiz. I use quizzes every 15 minutes of instruction in my class to get feedback on whether the students understood what I just talked about. And I say 15, that's roughly 15 to 20 minutes of instruction. If you look at my class, all these activities, it says 4.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those are all quizzes. And the idea is that I do instruction and then I stop and I say, okay, 4.1, and they go there and it has information for them. It says, hey, attend the lesson on the CPU socket and read chapter 1 of the book. They take a quiz, and that quiz is a really, really short quiz. In this case, it's 5 questions. It's not a huge long quiz. In fact, all of them are 3 to 6. Most of them are 5, to just let me know if they got the information. And I can then go and go through the quiz results, and I can look and see how my class did. So did my kids do well on this? So I go to statistics, and I can see
Some of the students got this one and this one, but we had a real misunderstanding here. Only 58% of the kids understood that question on the first go. And you can see I need to go over these questions again because I had some real misunderstanding. And that's the whole point of this. You're not going to get 100% all the time. But you're going to see what things that did you just go over that my students didn't understand what I said.
I also use quizzes for, obviously, tests. So not only are these formative 7 quizzes right here, then they do a project, which is what this motherboard quest is right here. And then at the end of the chapter, they have a test. And these 2 tests are different based on whether you're an IEP 504 student or a traditional student. It's how I use a quiz. Let's go through how to make a quiz. So I'm going to add an activity. And this time I'm going to add the quiz activity. So name up top, same thing as before. It's what chapter 1 test. That's what I'm going to see in the grade book. You get the idea. Description, not required to have a description, but you could say open note over the reading of chapter, whatever. You can put whatever you want in there, not required you to have that. And we're going to go through most of these. Timing. Do you want there to be a time frame, and when are they going to take the quiz? So I always have the opening on there, meaning they'll see it on their calendar now. They know this test is coming up, and it's going to be on the 29th. Although the time is kind of misnomer. I'm going to put 7 in the morning, just so you know it's that day. So the quiz will open on the 29th of July at 7 in the morning. Before that, they can click on it and we're open. I can also say it's going to close on a certain date if I want to. I don't usually put the close on there. I can put a time limit on my little mini quizzes. There's a time limit on every one of them of 5 minutes because I don't want them looking it up. I just want them to answer based on what's in their cranium to know if they got the information or not. So I do have time limits on those. On regular tests, I could say the time limit is 70 minutes because that's the most amount of time I can give them by the time the class gets started. That gives them a timer on the side that they see the time clicking down. And when the time is done, what happens? I'm going to hit show more right here. When the time expires, open attempts are submitted automatically. That's the normal process, and that's what I want to have happen. You can also give them a little bit of time. You can give them a grace period. Or you can say, if you didn't submit it, it doesn't count. It goes away, which I don't know why you do that. So that's what timing is for. When is it open, and is it a timed test, or is it not a timed test when they come in and take this? Grade is exactly the same as the grade for the assignment. You have to give it a category. It's in quarter 1. How many points is it worth? That's in another page. I'm going to show you that. How many attempts can they make? By default, it's 1. You can later say that, hey, you know what? I'm going to give you all another attempt. You can later change it to 2. Or you could say, in the case of my formative feedback, I have it set to unlimited. So after the first time they take it, they can do it as many times as they want to try to master that, make sure they've got a good grade. What grade counts, though? You can say the highest grade, the average grade, the first attempt, the last attempt. You can say you can take it as many times as you want, but only the first one counts. I don't know why you do that. Mine is always set to last attempt. If you take it again, that's the grade you got. And if you lower your grade, you take it again. That's me. I'm me. So layout is not a normal thing. It has an option to show more, but it's by default set to show one question at a time and to allow them to navigate through by choosing. And this is what that means by free navigation. If I was in this question, I can go and answer question 4 and then come back to 3. If I was like, I don't know this one, I don't have to answer it before I move on with free navigation. I can just go through and answer them in whatever order I want. That's the default profile. I've never had anyone who asked for anything else. Question behavior, deferred feedback means they don't know what they got until after the test is graded and submitted. That's normal. There are other options that you might or might not want to explore. I know other teachers use other of these options that allow you to do adaptive mode. So they know immediately if they got it wrong, but they lose 25% as they move on to the next question. I will leave it at deferred feedback for now. But you may want to play with some of those other ones. I know Jonathan Bryant uses a different one for all his formative ones. Can the students review them? It's set up by these options are set up by default. During the attempt, all they can see is what it's worth. They can't see whether it's right or wrong or what the right answer is during the test. Immediately after they're done, they can see what they answered. They can see what points they got for it, and they can get feedback if I typed in feedback for them to see. Later on, as soon as everything's done, this means 2 minutes. They've submitted it, but for the first 2 minutes, it won't let them see anything else. And that's, I think, a sneaky feature because students used to be able to go with the backwards key, change their answer and go forward, and it would regrade. I think that's why that was added. Later, while the quiz is still open, means I've submitted, but that person over there hasn't, and it's still open. And after it's closed, they can see everything. Nobody can do anything anymore. They can see what the answers are. So that's what the review options is for. Appearance, there's not anything there that opens by default because these are all normal things. There's 2 decimal places. The user's picture doesn't show. So anyway. We don't have the Safe Exam browser installed on our computer, so we can't use that. But here's one of the ones that I do use all the time. Extra restrictions. All my tests have a password. So even if time has passed, in other words, it's got to be on the 23rd, they can't do it 3rd block if they're in my class 4th block. They have to wait until they come to my class and I say the password for the test today is dog with a capital O, and then they can get into the test. So I don't require passwords on any of my formative stuff, but I might require a password on, I don't even know what I typed there. On another one, and I can always see what the password was later by just hitting the little eyeball. That's what that's for. I highly recommend you use a password on tests. Require a network address. If you put 10.66 here, 10.66 is the network address of all computers here at National Trail. That means they have to take it here at school, on school grounds, on the school Wi-Fi in order to connect to this. They can't do it from home. I don't care if they do their formative quizzes over and over again at home. I don't put network addresses in there. But if you're concerned with somebody trying to do it at home or trying to hack something, you can just put 10.66 in there and they can only do it here at Trail. That's what that network address means. Again, 10.66 is all you need to put in there. Okay, enforced delay between first and second attempts, and I always have this enabled, and I always have this set at 15 minutes. That's because during that time when my students do their informative one or their formative assessment, I don't want them trying to do it over and over again to try to get the right answer. I want them to stop and listen to me go over the review before they go and try to do it again. So I do enforce a delay between the first and second attempt. Is there a delay between every other attempt? And by the way, it doesn't have to be minutes. You could say you can only do it once a day. You could say one time a day if you wanted to. So I could say 15 minutes for the first one, and the second one I'm going to days, and you can do it as many times as you want to, but there's 1 day between attempt. I don't think high school students would ever make a second attempt, or at least not a third attempt, because they'll forget by that time. I don't use that. I only use this one. Overall feedback is if you want to give them feedback for a grade. In other words, if they have a 90% or above, so now it's saying grade boundary 90% up to 100, you want it to pop up and say, great job. And you want to make that text super big so everybody in the neighborhood got to see it. You could do just that. And you could have different feedbacks for every single grade level. You see, it says add more feedback fields. So I just added more. So now I could say, if they got an 80 to a 90%, it says good job. And you get the idea. I can put any other ones in there that I want to. And that's it. I'm going to hit save and display because now we've made a quiz and we have no questions in it whatsoever. So now we have to go and add questions. So we've made the quiz. This is our setup. And you can see a button that says add question there, or we can go to questions and add questions this way. They both get the same place. So right now, it says the maximum grade is 10 points. So this is a major test. I'm going to make this one worth 100 points. I'm going to hit save. That's the only place you set what the test is worth. I don't know why they put it here. It's been here the whole time. The other thing is I always click this shuffle button. What that does is it shuffles any questions I have for everyone who opens it, which means that student sitting there gets a test in one order. The student sitting here gets tests in the other order. Student over there, you get the idea. Everybody gets their test shuffled so that if they look at the screen next to them, they do not, there's very little chance of them seeing the same question as the student next to them. Okay, so that's my basic setup. Now I'm going to add a question to my test. So I got this little add button right here. I'm going to add. And I'm going to say a new question. However, there's 3 options there. New question means I'm building the question right now. From the question bank means I've already got questions made that I'm making a new test, and I'm going to just pull questions from that. And random question, which you should never choose, means that it's just going to randomly pick a question from your test bank and give it to them on this test, and you don't even know what they're going to get. And every single time they come in, they get a different question. I do that as a optional review at the end of the chapter. I have like a 5-question, are you ready for the test? And every single time they come in, it's worth almost no points. It just to let them kind of see some of the questions. I've never had somebody stay in it long enough to get 100%.
Okay, I want to make a side right here on the Moodle quiz before you start creating questions. And I made this mistake when I first started. You really, really are going to want to have categories those questions go into. When I first started doing quizzes, my first year, I just added questions as I went. And then all of a sudden at the end of the year, I had 200 questions with no organization to them at all. So I'm going to show you how to do that, how to add your categories. You can add them as you go for each section. So as you add a new chapter in your course, you can add a category for that chapter. You're just going to go to more here, and you have to be at the top level of your course. So if you're down here in your course, you have to go back to the top level of your course to see the drop downs. I'm going to go more, and I'm going to go to question bank. And right now I only have a couple questions inside here, but I'm going to go now to not to questions, but to categories. And I'm going to make categories for this class. You can see categories of a bunch of things that I have, but we're going to make a category for this class. So I'm going to add a category. I'm going to name it Chapter 1. I'm going to call it Mountain Climbing 101. I don't have to, I could just make it Chapter 1. And I'm going to hit Add Category. And you can see that's there. I can add other categories inside of that one, or I can add additional ones later. I can just hit Add Category. Now I see the course right here, or I can add a subcategory inside mountain climbing if I wanted to. I could just add Chapter 2 and hit Add Category. You can see those are adding. The reason we add categories is so that later on, particularly next year, when I go to do more things, I might add additional questions. I might use questions formative and summative, but it's really hard to find them if I don't have any kind of organization in the first place. You really want to add categories in each chapter before you start adding questions, because next we're going to add questions, and you're going to want to be able to add those into the category that you're using at that time.
Now I'm going to add a question to my test. So I got this little add button right here. I'm going to add, and I'm going to say a new question. However, there's 3 options there. New question means I'm building the question right now. From the question bank means I've already got questions made that I'm making a new test, and I'm going to just pull questions from that. And random question, which means that it's just going to randomly pick a question from your test bank and give it to them on this test, and you don't even know what they're going to get. And every single time they come in, they get a different question. Anyway, so new question. There are a lot of kinds of questions that you can add in Moodle. So let's go to the first one. Let's go to multiple choice. So I'm going to add a multiple choice question. I'm going to hit add. First of all, it says what category. I'm going to put it in up here under Chapter 1. For my class, I've already got a question category made called Chapter 1. And that means I'll be able to use them all throughout Chapter 1 in any activity I make. If you leave it in here, if I left it here, default for Chapter 1 test, that's the one that I don't want to have. That means it's for this, and I can only see it in this. I wouldn't want to do that. I want to have them available in the course, not just the quiz. You see the difference? Those are questions that I can only see in the quiz. These are questions that I can see in the chapter. Okay, question name. That is not going to be seen by anyone but you. In your list of questions, that's what you're going to see. So I'm going to say 1 question mark. That's just for me. What is the minimum height of a mountain? So now it's got default points of 2. That's the weight of the question. I like to have my multiple choice questions be defaulted at 2, my true or false default at 1. My matching depends on how many matching things I have on there, just to make things worth more or less points based on what they are. Okay, down here in answers, I have to put in the correct answer somewhere and say what point is it worth. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there, around 300 meters approximately above the surrounding terrain, and that's worth 100 points, or 100% of the grade. The next one, I'm gonna go and tweak this. Okay, by the way, you can have as many choices as you want. You see it has 5, but I can keep hitting blanks for 3 more choices. If you want to make more choices, you can, and you can give partial credit. So if you want to say there is no real answer, and you want to get and say, you know what, I'm going to give you 75% of the credit for that, because that's kind of true. But in our class, we taught 1,000 feet. So I could give partial credit for that if I wanted to. And then I want to always say shuffle the choices, which means that even if you're looking at the same answer or the question as the person next to you, the answers are in a different order, making it much harder to cheat. And then that's it. I'm going to save changes. I can hit save changes and continue editing, which just lets me know if it took the question, or I can hit save changes and it goes back to the quiz. So now I can see there it shows me chapter 1, what is a mountain? If I want to preview it, I hit the little eyeglass there, and this is what the students will see. What is the minimum height of a mountain? And you can see it changed all the orders, and every time you come into it, it's going to be in a different order as well. So and if you're looking at fill with correct answer, that's the right answer. It told me that's the one I have checked. That's another way to double check you picked the right answer. So that is a multiple choice question. The next one we're going to use true, false. It's simple. We'll go do true, false, add again up here. And by the way, it stays in the same category that you started with until you change it again. So I can say chapter 1, true or false. All mountains are made of granite. And so you put in the question. This is what they always see, is whatever the question text is. And then you just say, default points. You can see that's 1. And then what's the correct answer? It's false. The answer is false, but you just change whether it's false or true. And then save changes. That's it. And we can preview that question now. True or false? All mountains are made of granite. And then they just pick which one, and you can double check that correct answer is false. That is a true, false question. I can hit add, new question. Essay is just an essay question. Please tell me why you want to be a mountain climber. Now, default points, it said 5 for an essay. You may be like, it's not really worth that much. I'm just trying to get some feedback. It's going to give them an editor. How many lines do you want them to have? And that line's down this way. Do you want a huge answer? And this is how big the box is going to be. So maybe I'm like, 20 lines is enough. There's no minimum word limit, but I don't want them to go over 500 words. So I'm going to give them a 500 word limit on this essay question that we get, just like that. You can give them a plain text box if you wanted to. HTML editor is just fine. I had saved changes. This is what they're going to see with that 20-line box when they take their quiz. Please tell me why you want to be a mountain climber. It's going to give them this whole thing. Maybe you don't want to give them all the HTML stuff. Maybe that'll confuse them. You can make it a plain text editor if you want to. So these are the basic questions again that I'm going over. The last one is matching. And if we do a matching question, we're going to do the same thing with question name and question text. The only difference in matching is now these are the things they're going to match with here. So you have an HTML block that you could put something large in, including a picture. You could match, and I could put the same thing down here, match the mountain animal, and you could put goat and put a picture of a goat there, and you get the idea. So you could do sound, video, whatever in the question text area, but in the answer area, it's a simple text box that they're going to match with. And then they're going to pick which thing goes with which thing. And that's all it is to a matching one.
Here's an example of how you can do those with the HTML text box and use it for actually more than just pictures. And here's an example of sound. I've got all these questions for my IEP students so that they don't have to read all this. They can hit the button, match each term with the correct statement below, and they can read each one of the definitions every few milliseconds. Before they go and do the drop down. Now, again, the text box, there's no way for me to do anything more than just the simple text there. But in the HTML box of a matching question, like I said before, you could do pictures, but you can also do a recording. So then in my case, all my IEP students don't have to read large amounts on my test. It will read to them. They can just hit the play button, retains its data to hear me reading that as well. Obviously, the screen reader would work too, but I have found that the students prefer to hear me read it than to hear computer read it as well. But that's an example of a matching that, again, you can do more than the ones it says. Like I said, I kept saying add 3 more until I got a huge matching question. I just wanted to show a large example of matching.
That's the basics of setting up a quiz or test in Moodle. Like I said, there's lots more question types to look at, and I highly recommend you play with it and look at it. If you have an online test bank, we can import them in the Moodle, and I can help you do that. If I don't do it myself, I can send you a video, and you can import. We've already got a video on how to do this. If you use Diffit to make questions for your area, you can import those Diffit questions with a little bit of formatting into Moodle to make a Moodle test bank without any work at all. And it's going to make a lesson on mountain climbing for me. It's going to give me resources on mountain climbing for me with Diffit, and it's going to give me quiz questions and answers that I can use. So if you are starting a class with very little resources available to you, you could use Diffit to build your resources as you go. Look at this reading passage I've got a summary, I've got vocab words, I've got questions. There's not enough questions. I'm doing a test. I want to do comprehensive questions, and I want to add 5 more questions. And it's thinking, and then it's going to add 5 more questions, and I'll be able to copy and import these questions right into Moodle if I want to, and I can do more complex thinking questions if I want to, and they don't have to be multiple choice questions, by the way. There also have short answer questions down here and open-ended prompts that I can use as well. Just to give you some ideas of how to easily get questions into your Moodle site to get yourself started if you're doing a course that doesn't already have that set up for you. Okay, those are the level 1 Moodle activities to get you started. Thanks for joining me.